My name is Rachel, and I'm 39 years old. I live in a suburb outside Chicago with my husband, Matt, and our 14-year-old son. For most of my life, there was one person I thought would always be there: Claire. We met in 5th grade when she shared half of her peanut butter sandwich with me because I forgot my lunch. That's how our friendship started. We went to prom together, stood beside each other at our weddings, held each other through miscarriages and funerals, and celebrated birthdays, promotions, and every ordinary moment in between. People used to joke that we were basically sisters. I believe that. About a year ago, things started feeling off. Nothing dramatic at first, just little things. Claire stopped answering texts for hours, sometimes days. When we did meet for coffee, she seemed distracted, always checking her phone. If I asked what was wrong, she'd smile and say, "Just busy, Rach, you know how life is." And I let it go because that's what you do when you trust someone. Then Matt started acting strange too. He began working late more often. He guarded his phone like it contained nuclear launch codes. Once I walked into the kitchen and he flipped his screen over so fast it almost fell off the counter. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, "just work." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe both of them. The night everything changed was a Thursday in October. It had been raining since noon, and the roads were slick. Claire had texted me earlier asking if I could drop off a casserole dish she'd left at our house after a neighborhood potluck. "Just leave it on the porch if I'm not home," she wrote. Simple enough. I drove over around 8:30 p.m. Her street was quiet except for the sound of rain hitting the pavement. As I pulled into her driveway, I noticed something odd. Matt's truck was there. My first thought was completely innocent. Maybe he stopped by to help her with something, I told myself. Claire was divorced. Matt had fixed her garbage disposal before. It wasn't impossible. But something in my stomach tightened anyway. I carried the casserole dish to the porch. The front lights were off, but a lamp glowed in the back of the house. I knocked once. No answer. I should have left right then. Instead, I walked around the side of the house to see if Claire was in the kitchen. That's when I looked through the window. Inside, Claire was standing in the living room. Matt was there too. He wasn't fixing a sink. He wasn't helping with a project. He was holding her face in both hands, and then he kissed her. Not a quick accidental kiss. A kiss that had happened before. A kiss between two people who already knew each other's bodies. I remember every ridiculous detail. The blue throw blanket on her couch. The rain streaking down the glass. The way Matt laughed softly after she said something I couldn't hear. The way Claire touched his chest like she belonged there. For a second, my brain simply refused to process it. This isn't real, I thought. You're misunderstanding what you're seeing. Then Matt leaned down and kissed her again. And the world snapped into focus. I don't remember walking back to my car. I don't remember starting the engine. I only remember sitting in the driver's seat with my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. 20 years. 20 years of friendship. And apparently I had been the only person in this story who didn't know what was happening. I drove home in silence. When I got there, our son was upstairs doing homework. The house smelled like the chili I'd made for dinner. Everything looked normal. That was the cruelest part. Normal. Matt came home 40 minutes later. "Hey," he said casually, hanging up his keys. "Sorry I'm late." I looked at him and realized I no longer recognized his face. "Where were you?" I asked. "At the office." One lie, so easy, so practiced. I stared at him for a long moment. "That's interesting," I said quietly, "because I just came from Claire's house." He froze. Not dramatically, just enough. Enough to confirm everything. "Rachel? Don't." My voice sounded strangely calm. "How long?" He sat down slowly. "It wasn't supposed to happen." I laughed. I actually laughed. "That's not an answer." He rubbed his forehead. "About 8 months." 8 months. 8 months of dinners together. 8 months of birthday parties. 8 months of Claire hugging me hello while sleeping with my husband behind my back. The next day, Claire called. I let it ring. Then she texted, "Please let me explain." I stared at that message for a long time before replying. "You had 8 months to explain." She wrote back immediately, "I never meant to hurt you." That sentence made me angrier than the affair itself. Because people always say that after they've already made 1,000 choices, that guaranteed someone would get hurt. The weeks that followed were ugly. There were tears, apologies, arguments, therapy appointments, and long nights where I stared at the ceiling wondering how many memories were now contaminated. Had they started flirting at our 4th of July barbecue? Had she smiled at me across the table while secretly knowing she was sleeping with my husband? Had everyone else seen signs I missed? I obsessed over questions that had no answers.
I actually owned part of the venue where my daughter decided I was too embarrassing to appear.
Rachel, stop trying to figure out why two people chose to betray you. Start figuring out what you want your life to look like now. That was the first time I realized I still had a future that wasn't defined by their choices. Matt moved into an apartment for a while. We separated and began counseling, not because I had decided to forgive him, but because I needed clarity before making permanent decisions. Claire, on the other hand, disappeared from my life completely. No dramatic confrontation, no screaming in a parking lot, just silence. Sometimes people think the end of a friendship comes with fireworks. Mine ended with a window, a kiss, and the quiet realization that trust can die without making a sound. It's been 11 months now. I still drive past Claire's street occasionally. I don't stop. Matt and I are still figuring out what comes next. Some days I think our marriage might survive. Some days I'm not sure. But I do know this. The worst part wasn't discovering the affair. The worst part was realizing that the person I would have called first, the person I would have cried to, trusted, and leaned on, was the very person who helped create the pain. For 20 years, I thought I knew exactly who was on my side. Then I looked through that window, and in a single moment, I learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones capable of breaking you the deepest. Because betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the person who knows where you keep the spare key. And sometimes all it takes is one glance through a window to see the truth you never wanted to find.